Hello there. I am looking at some of the code that we wrote in the last lesson when we explored if statements, and I want to elaborate a little bit more and talk about operators in this lesson. So we actually used a few operators, and I'm sure you're familiar with quite a few operators already, so that's good. But I want to point out here that in many of our if statements, we used operators like the less than sign. And I'm sure you're familiar with that, and a plus sign and a minus sign. Those are what we call operators. So we're going to dig into those a little bit more today. Now, these are going to apply to any programming language. Pretty much any programming language has a set of operators that you can use to do operations. So if I scroll down here, there's one more that I want to look for. Now, we commented out this code sample here. But here we're using what we call the equality operator. And if you remember, that's how you can compare two values. So we want to see if the value stored in that variable is equal to the value that's stored in that variable. Now, so that's the equality operator. And then another one that we've been using since day one of JavaScript is the assignment operator. And that's just a single equal sign. So we use that to assign whatever's on the right-hand side to whatever variable is on the left-hand side. So we've already talked about the assignment operator, 1 equals sign, and the equality operator, 2 equals sign, and you already are familiar with many of the basic operators. Okay, for this lesson, let's go ahead and we can right-click on the JavaScript folder and create a new file, and let's call it operators.html. And set it up like we always do with HTML5. We'll set, what did I do there? We'll set the title to operators like this, and we'll add a script element. This is all familiar to you by now, I hope, so that we can add JavaScript code inside the script element. All right, I am going to just pull my notes over here. So these are the notes that you have access to. And we're going to talk about arithmetic operators first. So we don't really need to talk about these that much because I'm sure you're familiar with these from high school math or grade school or elementary school math even. But if you want to do an operation that adds two numbers, you'd use the addition operator, just a plus sign. There's the subtraction operator. In computers, we use the asterisk to do multiplication. Okay, and to do division, that's what we use when we're typing on the computer. So you already know those operators, and I'm not going to spend time on them. But this one you may not know. This is another arithmetic operator that you may not have worked with before. It's called the modulus operator. Okay, let's do a little example to explore this modulus operator here. I'm going to move that over. And the modulus operator is used to get the remainder of dividing two numbers. Okay, so let's start out here in our code. I'm going to rearrange things a little bit just to give myself some more space here. I think the size is good enough so that you can see it nice and neat. And I'm going to put a comment here that says modulus operator. Modulus operator. Okay, and which is actually, it's the percent sign. So that's what the modulus operator is. And let's do this. Let's declare a variable with let, and we'll say let, and we'll give it a variable name of remainder like this, and we'll set it equal to 7 mod 2. That's what we say when we see an expression like this. We can say 7 mod 2, okay, because we're using the modulus operator. So what this is going to do, it's going to divide the first number by the second number, and the result is going to be the remainder. Okay, so 7 divided by 2 is going to produce a remainder of 1. So let's check that out and make sure that that's what we get for our remainder variable. So here I'll go console log, and I'll log the remainder like that. And then let's open this page up in the browser. So I saved my changes, of course. And then we'll open this in the default browser, and that's coming up over here. Nothing to see on the page because we have no content, but if I open up the log, I should see that 1 shows up in the log here. All right, so there you go. You already know the arithmetic operators, and now you know what the modulus operator is used for. This one comes in handy, like if you need to figure out if a number is odd or even, you can use the modulus operator to do that. We'll talk about that in class probably. The next category of operators are what we call the shortcut arithmetic operators. So let's put a comment here, shortcut arithmetic operators. And here's, we'll just do some examples of what they look like here. We'll declare a variable with let, and we'll call it x. And let's just set it equal to 4 like this. Okay, so now we've got a variable to work with. And now here I'm going to show you what's called the shortcut addition operator. So if we go x and then plus equals, there it is, plus equals, that's the operator. By the way, operators can be more than one character. Like this one is plus equals, so that's considered the shortcut arithmetic operator. And if I put a 2 on the other side of that operator, what that's going to do is increase x by 2. Okay, now this is actually, I'm going to put a semicolon there to end my statement, although it's not required in JavaScript, but I'm going to put a comment here that says this is the same as x equals x plus 2. Okay, so here what we would be doing is we're going to reassign x to a new value, and it's going to be based off of its old value plus 2. Okay, so now this is kind of weird because you might wonder, why don't we just do this? That's something that everybody's familiar with. Well, programmers love shortcuts, and so if they can save themselves from typing a few keystrokes, they're going to do it. So one thing that's confusing for beginners is that we have alternative ways to do the same thing. So anyways, x plus equals 2 is the same as that. So now we can do the same for the other arithmetic operators. Most of them have a shortcut like this. So here we can do x minus equals 2. That's the shortcut subtraction operator, and that's the same as x equals x minus 2. Okay. All right, and then we can also do it with the division, x divided by equals 2. That's the same as x equals x divided by 2. And then finally we have the shortcut multiplication operator, which is x times equals, or x asterisk equals 2, and that's the same as x equals x times 2. Okay. All right, so there you go. That's what you can have in your notes as reminders. This is the one we use the most. The other ones I don't really use very much, but we'll use this one all the time, and I'll explain why, which is to concatenate strings. So you know that we use the addition operator to concatenate strings. If you're working with strings and the addition operator, you're doing concatenation. If you're working with number variables and the addition operator, you're doing addition, math. Okay, so what we can do, let's do an example of string concatenation right here, just to refresh our memory. Const str1 equals the string hi, so put it in quotation marks because it's a string variable. And then we can go const str2 equals there. I don't know, I'll just do it like that, something like that. And then actually I'm going to leave that exclamation off here. And then what we could do here is console log str1 plus str2, and then we could even concatenate a literal. This is what's called a literal string right here. It's not in a variable, it's just a value that's inside a quotation marks. Okay, so here is in this statement, we're concatenating 3 strings together. Whatever str1 variable is storing, and we're joining that or concatenating that with str2. Notice how I put the space in there because I wanted the space there. And then finally, we're concatenating what we call a string literal right here. It's literally a quotation mark, an exclamation mark, I should say. Okay, so you're already familiar with that. We've done that before. You can use the addition operator to do string concatenation when you're working with strings. You can also use the shortcut arithmetic operator to join things onto the end of a string. Let me show you what I mean here. So we can do, I'll just go let str equal hi, like that. Okay, and then there's my first statement. And now if I want to add space there onto this, I can do str plus equals like that. Okay. All right, so the nice thing about this is a lot of times you have a string and you want to add something onto it, you can use this shortcut. So this would be the same as this. Same as str equals str plus there. Okay, just a little bit of a shortcut. So you could type that in, but no programmer does that. They always use the shortcuts. So that will allow you to add a string to a variable that's already storing a string. Actually, I shouldn't say add, I should say concatenate, because they're a little bit different. Okay, so we've covered the arithmetic operators and then the shortcut arithmetic operators. The next category of operators is going to be the increment and decrement operators. And now these are also shortcuts. So we have shortcuts for shortcuts as programmers. Increment and decrement operators. So you can type this comment in your notes just to remind you, but the increment operator is actually 2 plus signs. Okay, the decrement operator is 2 minus signs. Okay, these are a little bit different than the operators that we've been using before because they're what we call unary operators, meaning that there's only one operand. I'll show you what I mean right here. So here's an example. Let's go ahead and we have x that we used in a previous example. Let's just go ahead and set x equal to 5, and then here's the increment operator, x plus plus. Okay, now this is known as a unary operator because there's only one operand. Up here, in our other examples, we've used 2 operands. So the operands are the things that are on each side of your operator. They call those operands. So there's 2 operands in our previous code samples. Here, the only operand is just x, so they call that a unary operator. Okay, now what this is going to do is it's going to increase x by 1. So if you were to console log this, you would see that x, it's going to show 6 in the log. Okay, all right, go ahead and check that out and make sure that works. And then here, if we did x minus minus, that should bring x back down to 5. Okay, so console log, go ahead and type this in and check it out in the browser. Make sure you see what you expect, but these are the increment and decrement operators. So again, we could use some of the other approaches that we talked about already. We could use x equals x plus 1, or we could do x plus equals 1, the shortcut arithmetic operators. So why do we have a third shortcut? Well, the reason for this is that incrementing or decrementing a variable by 1 is super common in programming, and we'll see that once we get to loops. It might be hard to see now, but this one comes in super handy and we use it all the time. This one sometimes, but the increment operator is one that we use a lot. Okay, the next category of operators is what we call the comparison operators. Okay, and you've already seen most of these, so I'm going to pull my notes up that you have access to right here. And where did it go? Here we go. These are the comparison operators. They allow you to compare values. They're especially handy when you use them in Boolean expressions. Okay, so if you want to find out if one variable is less than another variable, there's the less than sign. I don't need to spend time on this because I assume you already know it, but there's the greater than or equal to, less than or equal to, greater than or equal to. Now this is a new one that you may not have seen before this class, but there's the equality operator, and we've already talked about that. You can compare two variables or the values that those variables are storing, and you can compare them to see if they're the same. So we use those a lot in if statements. Okay. Now if you want to see if variables are not the same, you can use that one right there, which is called the inequality operator. Okay, so we've already talked about all of these, except we haven't talked about this one yet, and we'll try this one in an example just so you can see it right here. So those are what we call the comparison operators. There's a few that I left off, and we can talk about those later once we get a little bit deeper into programming. But these are the main ones. There are two more that I can think of that might come in handy down the road, but let's not worry about those right now. Okay, let's do an example with the inequality operator. Okay, in the notes here, I have an example where you're using the greater than or equal to. You can go ahead and try that one out in your code just to make sure it works. It'd be good practice for you. And here's an example with the equality operator. Now, we've already used this one, but make sure you understand what's going on right here. If this is true, meaning that if x is storing a value of 5, then we're going to dive into this code branch with our if statement. If this is not true, if x is storing 6 or some other number that's not 5, then our program will execute this code branch right here. Okay, so we've already seen this. I won't spend too much time with it. Here's a refresher on comparing string values to see if they're equal. And we did something like this in the last lesson. So we prompt the user. So we call the prompt function. We pass in a string so that they know what they're supposed to enter. That's what the prompt function does with that parameter. It displays it in the window that pops up. The prompt function returns a value. Whatever it returns is going to be stored in that variable. And what it returns is whatever they enter into the prompt box. Okay, and then we use the equality operator here to see if the word that we are thinking of is operators. Okay, and if so, then we alert good guess. Okay, now here's the one I wanted to get to. Let's go ahead and do this one in our code together just to get some practice. You should really be doing the previous ones that I skipped. I'm just trying to keep the video short here. But in order to get good at programming, you have to practice it and type things in so you get really fluent with the syntax and all that. So we really should be typing all these examples into our sample file here. But I'm going to put this back over here, and let's go ahead and, I spelled comparison wrong. Let's go ahead and try one of these here. So what we'll do is declare a variable here, and we'll go const my name, and we'll set that equal to the string Lou. Okay, I just made that up. Okay, and then what we'll do is we'll have our program ask the user for their name. So I'm going to create a variable with the name of your name. Notice that I'm using camel case for these variables. It's very important to use camel case for your variable names. So be aware of that. And here we're going to prompt the user to say, what's your name? Okay, so we're calling the prompt function, passing in a string to tell them what we want them to enter. It's going to return what they entered. And now we'll use the inequality operator right here. So we can go if parentheses, curly braces. Remember, I like to set the table for my if statements, which means I get the syntax in place first. So I type in the keyword if, then a parentheses, curly braces. And then the next thing I do is I split them curlies is what I say. And now I've set up the syntax for my if statement, and we're ready to fill in the details. So I'll go inside the parentheses there. And I want to check and see if my name is not equal to your name. Then we know that we don't have the same name. So here I can do an alert, and it says our names are different. Don't forget the quotation marks there, like that. There you go. Save that. Let's run this just so we continue to make sure that everything works. So here we go. There's our prompt function. It's going to return whatever we type in there. I'm going to type in Fred and hit OK. And it says our names are different. Now, I should test this to when our names are the same just to make sure that it works properly here. So I'm going to go ahead and refresh here. And this time I'm going to enter capital L-U because that's what we have in our code. And here, now I don't expect anything to happen because our if statement isn't doing anything if they're equal. So there are times in your program, and it's quite common, when you want to compare two values to see if they're not equal, and if so, you want to do something. Okay, so that's the inequality operator. Okay, I've got one more category of operators for you here, and they are called logical operators. And I bet you've seen these, but maybe not. So now the first one is two ampersands, and we call that the AND operator. And the second one is what we call two pipe characters. Now, you may never have used this. It's on your keyboard. It should be right above the Enter key, and you have to hold Shift down. So there you go. There's the pipe operators, and we put two of those together to make what we call the OR operator. All right, so how do we use these? Some of you may know already. We can use the AND and the OR operators to combine Boolean expressions. Here is an example here. So let's do this. Let's do let test score 1 equal 95. Let's say we got a 95 on our first test, and we'll do let test score 2 equal, let's say we got a 72. Whoops. Okay, so we've got two test scores, and I want to find out if both of them are an A or better. Okay, so here's how we can use the AND operator. It's when we want to find out if both Boolean expressions are true. In other words, is test score 1 greater than 90 and test score 2 greater than 90? Okay, so here's how this is going to look in our if statement. If test score 1 is greater than 90, so there's our first Boolean expression, and then we'll do the double ampersand and test score 2 is greater than 90. If both of these Boolean expressions are true, then it's going to execute these statements inside this code block right here. So what we can do here is we can do console log, and we can say, great job on both tests. Like that. Okay. Now, so we use the AND operator to see if two Boolean expressions are both true. And it reads real nice and neat. We can say if test score 1 is greater than 90 and test score 2 is greater than 90. If both of those are true, then it will dive into this code block and execute that code. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and copy this if statement, so you can just select those 3 lines, copy them. Let's paste them right below it here, and let's use the OR statement instead. So here, we'll make that be the OR operator, which is what we call the double pipe. So you may not be familiar with that key on your keyboard, and you might have to find it. You have to hold the Shift key down to do it. Okay, so now what this is saying is if test score 1 is greater than 90 or test score 2 is greater than 90, then we can't say that you did a great job on both tests. We can say you did a great job on one of the tests. So I'm going to change that. Okay, so the AND and the OR operator are very common, and we can use them to make what we call compound Boolean expressions. Those are Boolean expressions that are a combination of multiple Boolean expressions. So here we have one Boolean expression. If we're using it with the OR, then that means that only one of these two expressions needs to be true for us to dive into this code block. But if we're using the AND operator, that means that both of the expressions need to be true in order for us to dive into the code block for the if statement. Okay, now I do have some extra samples for you to work on in the notes, and I think that would be really important for you to do so. I'm trying to keep these videos somewhat short, so we can talk about the other examples in class. All right, let me know if you have any questions.